The Lantern in the Window. Part 1. The Window of a Quiet House. There was once a quiet house at the very edge of a small lakeside town, so quiet that people often forgot it was there at all. It sat beneath tall trees that swayed like slow, sleepy guardians, letting leaves drift down like tiny golden feathers. And in the upper room of this house, there was a window that glowed every evening, just before the sun began to sink. The glow came from a lantern. Not a modern one. Not one powered by gears or wires, but a simple old lantern with soft golden light that flickered gently as if it breathed. The people in the town didn't know who lit it, nor when nor why. They only knew that no matter the weather, whether the wind howled, the rain whispered, or the snow drifted down like feathers, the lantern in the window always appeared at dusk. Quiet, steady, and warm. Children liked to imagine it was magical. Adults said it was probably nothing more than a comforting habit. But no one actually went close enough to see who lived inside the quiet house. Not until one unusually peaceful evening, when a soft knock tapped on the door. Part 2. A Visitor with a Memory. The knock came from a young traveler named Solin, who had been wandering the lakeside path long after most people returned home. He wasn't lost, at least not in the ordinary sense. He simply felt a gentle pull toward the light in the upper window, as if it recognized him in a way he couldn't quite explain. He raised his hand to knock again, but the door opened before he could. An elderly woman stood there, wrapped in a shawl the color of late autumn leaves. Her expression was kind, peaceful, and strangely familiar. "You came a little earlier than I expected," she said softly. Solin blinked. I'm sorry, do we know each other?" "Come in," she replied warmly, motioning him through the doorway. "You must be tired. The lake path asks a lot of anyone who walks it." Her voice felt like a song he had once known long ago, and though he didn't know why, he stepped inside. Part 3. A room filled with gentle light. The house interior was simple but beautiful. Woven rugs, shelves of handmade trinkets, dried herbs hanging from overhead beams, and windows framed by curtains that danced lightly in the breeze. But the most striking thing was how every corner seemed washed in gentle sun-colored light. The old woman guided Solin to a seat near the hearth. "You're one of the few who still listen to the lantern," she said. Solin hesitated. "Did it call to me?" "It always chooses the right moment," the woman answered. "Sometimes it takes many years before someone hears it clearly." Solin felt that same quiet familiarity again. The warmth of the room, the soft ticking of the lantern flame upstairs, the almost musical silence. He didn't know why, but he felt safe, completely and genuinely safe, in a way he hadn't felt anywhere in a long time. "Forgive me," he said, "but I don't remember ever meeting you, and yet it feels as though you've been here before," she finished for him with a gentle smile. "That is the lantern's doing. It remembers people even when they forget themselves." Part 4. A Lantern that Remembers. The woman offered him a cup of warm tea that smelled faintly of citrus and honey. "The lantern glows for those who are looking for a place to rest," she explained. "Not a physical rest, but the kind that settles inside the heart." Solin stared into the steam rising from his cup. He felt the words settle into him like soft snow. "But why me?" he asked quietly. The woman didn't answer immediately. She walked to the window and gently touched the curtain. "Because," she said at last, "you were once a child who stood outside this very house watching the lantern glow." Solin froze. Flicker. A feeling. A moment he couldn't quite see but almost could. "I don't remember," he whispered. "You don't need to remember everything," she said kindly. "Just one feeling is enough. The lantern remembers the rest for you." Part 5. Threads of a Forgotten Evening. The woman led him up the wooden staircase to the upper room where the lantern glowed. When Solin entered, he suddenly felt a wave of warmth. Not just physical warmth, but a familiar pull, like reuniting with a long-lost melody. The lantern flickered gently in response, its flame swaying as if it recognized him. "You came here once during a summer storm," the woman said. "You were frightened by the thunder, and you ran from the lakeside path until you found the glow in the window. You stood right there," she pointed to the doorway, "and I gave you a blanket just as I did today with tea. You were only a child then, but the lantern remembered." Solin felt the memory beginning to take shape, soft and blurry, like a watercolor painting slowly finding its colors. I didn't know this place still existed, he murmured. Many people forget what brings them comfort, she said. But comfort never forgets them. Part 6: The Lantern's Purpose. The woman lifted the lantern carefully and held it between them. The golden glow painted her face with warmth, and Solin felt as though he were standing inside a living sunrise. This lantern was crafted generations ago to be a beacon of calm. Not magic. Not power. Just comfort. A place where the world slows and breathing becomes easier, and hearts can untangle themselves. She placed the lantern into Solin's hands. To his surprise, it wasn't hot. It was warm, like holding someone's hand. It feels alive, he whispered. In a way it is, she replied. Because every person who has found comfort in its light leaves behind a small echo of peace. And those echoes guide others, just as they guided you. Solin felt something gentle lift inside him, like a sigh he didn't know he'd been holding. Part 6: The Lantern's Purpose. The woman lifted the lantern carefully and held it between them. The golden glow painted her face with warmth, and Solin felt as though he were standing inside a living sunrise. This lantern was crafted generations ago to be a beacon of calm. Not magic. Not power. Just comfort. A place where the world slows and breathing becomes easier, and hearts can untangle themselves. She placed the lantern into Solin's hands. To his surprise, it wasn't hot. It was warm, like holding someone's hand. It feels alive, he whispered. In a way it is, she replied. Because every person who has found comfort in its light leaves behind a small echo of peace. And those echoes guide others, just as they guided you. Solin felt something gentle lift inside him, like a sigh he didn't know he'd been holding. Part 7: A Night of Soft Stories. As the night grew deeper, the woman told Solin stories. Stories of travelers who arrived lost and left lighter. Stories of nights when the lantern glowed brighter than all the stars. Stories of the lakeside path that revealed itself differently to anyone who walked it. And as she spoke, Solin felt a quiet connection forming between past and present. A harmony he had never known he needed. You can stay as long as you wish, she said warmly. The lantern's light is not something that asks for repayment. It simply offers itself. Solin nodded slowly, feeling emotion well softly within him. Not sharp, not overwhelming, but gentle. Like the lantern. Golden. Steady. Kind. Part 8: The Dawn That Changes Everything. Morning arrived with soft pastel light pooling over the horizon. Birds drifted between branches, and the lake shimmered like a sheet of glass. Solin joined the woman outside as she tended to the small garden. I feel like I understand something now, he said. And what is that? She asked, smiling softly. That sometimes we don't need answers. We only need a place where the world slows down long enough for our hearts to hear themselves. The woman nodded. That, she said, is exactly why the lantern exists. Solin looked toward the window where the lantern rested gently on a wooden table. I'd like to come back, he said. You always can, she replied. Anyone who has once been guided by the lantern will always find their way again. Epilogue: The light lives on. Solin continued his travels, but something within him had shifted. He carried the memory of the lantern like a quiet ember inside his heart, soft, warm, comforting. And sometimes when he passed through other towns, he saw small glimmers in other windows, little lights people kept for their own reasons. But none glowed quite like the lantern in the quiet house by the lake. Yet whenever he thought of it, the same warmth returned to him. The lantern had not only lit his path, it had reminded him that comfort, once found, never truly fades. It stays within, shining gently in the background of life, like a soft lantern in the window of the mind. And in the quiet house by the lakeside, the lantern continued to burn each evening, warm, steady, waiting to guide the next weary heart home.
Thanks for watching. For more content, like, comment, and subscribe.